Let me introduce you to George, aka the Don, aka King, aka the one and only. These are his nicknames. This is how he introduced himself to me. George lives in Nairobi. He was born and raised here. More specifically, he grew up in the part of the town that most people recognize as the slums. There's this road through Nairobi's central business district, and once you cross it, things get a little testy. That's where he's from. George began his life in this building, and his mom worked in that one, cleaning offices. Until one day when she decided to leave town with a man she had just met, a man who was not interested in bringing up George. That meant he was on his own. He even went to her old office to see if he could have her old job as a cleaner, and the boss wasn't having it. So George wound up on the streets and hungry, and he found a group of boys who were in similar rough situations. Unfortunately, as one might expect, drugs and crime became part of their world. One of the addictions he developed at the time was getting high off of jet fuel. George actually asked me if I knew why jet fuel would be so addicting. I didn't know. He told me it was because jet fuel is a very effective appetite suppressant that could easily make you forget how hungry you are. Man, when a kid ends up in that scenario at that point, like, how many things have gone wrong? He also told me where that nickname, the one and only, came from, and it is also a sad story. See, there were 5 boys in his crew, and 2 of them were killed in the streets due to active violence. 2 others wound up in prison and didn't make it out of there. That made George the one and only. He was the only one who had a chance to try and make a new life, and he did exactly that. Today, he shares his stories of growing up on the streets of Nairobi to evoke greater empathy. Storytelling, of course, is a deeply human act. We use stories to create meaning. We use myths to build empires. We've used testimonies to bring them down. Probably heard stuff like this before. I think it's easy to underestimate the power of a story, and it's really easy to do that, I think, because taking in a good story is really fun. I mean, fun's maybe not always the right word, because there's sad stories, there's horror stories, but just taking in a story and letting your brain go along for the ride is a rewarding experience. And because storytelling rewards your brain like that, that's why it has such a powerful effect. It feels effortless because in a lot of ways, it is effortless. Our brain is designed to process information through the lens of story. If not for that, we are hit with so much information all the time, nonstop, so without some sort of filter screening things through what's important, it would just be overwhelming. Stories take those information and turn them into ingredients that it can use to provide us with meaning. Meaning gets remembered. Meaning turns into memory, and according to Stanford research, people remember stories up to 22 times better than facts. Whenever your brain hears a story, it's actually undergoing something called neurocoupling. It means that your brain activity is starting to mirror that of the person who's telling you that story. It literally creates a bond, and then it releases an amazing cocktail: oxytocin, cortisol, and dopamine. So oxytocin boosts empathy. It creates a bond. It's the same hormone that fires when mothers are breastfeeding. Cortisol keeps you alert. That's the hormone that's stoked by the tension within a story, and it makes you lean in and pay attention. And then there's dopamine. I know you're acquainted with this one. It's what makes hearing the story pleasurable. It makes you want more. It also plays a significant role in motivation and motivating action. So even though storytelling is like this very fundamental human thing, what's kind of funny is we don't have just this one singular catch-all definition of what a story even is. I'm sure you've heard someone say something like, a story, well, a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's true, and that can also apply to a pot-bellied pig. There are so many different definitions and frameworks of storytelling, and some of them are pretty good. You've probably encountered some of Joseph Campbell's stuff as it applies to Western storytelling, and I like it, and it's really helpful to learn. For what it's worth, when trying to tell a good story, I try and include these 3 things. A character, someone people can relate to, who has a point of view and some sort of goal or objective. Attention, conflict, and something that raises the stakes are all really important. I think a lot of stories benefit from having their character need to make a big, challenging decision. And a change. Like, even if your character fails at the goal, maybe their sense of confidence has changed, their outlook on themselves, a belief about the world. Change is part of a story. So how does storytelling change the world? it happens in layers. So first, there's the micro influence on the world, and this is pretty close to what I do. You know, I tell stories for a nonprofit organization, so it means that a lot of the stories I tell are attached to some sort of campaign or concrete ask, like donations. At other times, it might be asking people to sign up to volunteer for something, or to participate in an event, sign a petition, that sort of thing. These tend to be pretty specific asks. They're concrete, they're measurable, it's easy to see if you've hit your goal or if you haven't. Admittedly, they can also feel transactional, sometimes they are, but they can create change still as part of a concentrated movement. But of course, storytelling can also affect change at a more macro level, as you're trying to change laws, opinions, behaviors. If you think about how culture has evolved over time and its stance over what's acceptable and what's not, so much of that change has happened through stories. This is more transformational than transactional. It's harder to measure, harder to quantify, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. In addition to these, there's one other very important area of change that storytelling impacts, and it's within the person at the center of the story. So when I met George, he actually took me around different parts of Nairobi. He walked me through places where he grew up. He showed me where he had to run from police officers. He showed me where other gang members chased him down. He showed me some sites where he lost friends, unfortunately. And he told me that as painful as his story was and has been, every time he gets to retell it, a part of him heals. He told me the first time he tried doing this, trying to just walk somebody through the physical space that made up his story, it was actually such a challenging experience he couldn't get through it without crying. George made it very clear to me that he was willing to share his story. He wanted his story out there into the world. He wanted it to reshape the broader narrative that we use when we think about places like Nairobi and kids like George 20 years ago. I agree with this. When we have a narrative around a place, I think it's really important for it to be shaped by the people who live there, people like George. There should be nothing written about us without us, I've heard it put. This is why storytellers, especially storytellers for social change, need to be willing to wrestle with all the complexities that surround it. There's a fine and sometimes fuzzy line between sharing someone's story with dignity and exploiting their pain. Telling a whitewashed story about poverty or colonialism, that's not the answer either. I don't think we should look past the hard parts. Whenever you look at successful social movements or significant moments of change, you're gonna find storytelling at the heart of it. You have so many novels that are associated with times that history has turned a page on something. Effective leaders often succeed because they've successfully told a story about where a group of people are going together. So it makes you wonder, why do so many organizations and campaigns and causes that care about creating change treat storytelling like an add-on, like an accessory? My hunch is that it's because it feels fluffy right next to the serious work. But funding, partnerships, volunteers, donations, programs, even having the right social climate where your work can generate enthusiasm and thrive, that all comes down to belief. And belief comes from trust, and trust comes from the stories we tell. No stories, no movement. It's that simple. Okay, so what if you're at this point where you don't need any more convincing, you're ready to get started, you just want some next steps to dive deeper into storytelling for change? It's easiest for me to speak from my own example. It's probably the case with everyone, but I started within the marketing department of a nonprofit, and storytelling kind of emerged as my strength and my area of passion and what I was most excited about. I think for a lot of people, that's a reasonable entry point. Nonprofit communications. A lot of nonprofits have full marketing and communications teams. And listen, I know the job market's tough, especially with all the stuff going on these days. I think if you could make the case to offer up some of your services for free, just say, hey, I care about your organization, I want to offer you some storytelling materials, you'll probably get taken up on that offer a few times. As you get that experience, turn your work into a portfolio that shows what you can do and what you can offer to other organizations. Look, in the long run, I believe in people getting paid for their work and that storytelling is a high enough value where it should be prioritized, but I'll still offer a pro bono every now and then. It can really help you and the organization, and if it has that mutual benefit, let's make it happen. It doesn't start with a Hollywood budget or fancy gear. Technology has taken away so many barriers to entry that used to be there. It starts with curiosity, learning, and respect. And make something you'd be proud to share back with the people it features. To sum it all up, social impact storytelling is simply fun for me. I love getting to go places and tell stories about people trying to create change. And I love that that can help them make that change. I love nerding out about the science and mystery of what makes a good story. I love the people it enables me to meet and interact with. We live in an age of noise and doom scrolling and clickbait. We need more stories that can effectively cut through that noise. Stories that remind us we're human and connected to each other. So here's my suggestion. Don't treat storytelling as an afterthought. Please don't do that. Treat it like what it is. One of the oldest and most powerful tools for change we've ever had. It's timeless. Use it well, use it wisely. Just make sure you use it.